10 things everyone needs to know about sensory integration dysfunction. Number 1. Sensory integration dysfunction is also known as sensory processing disorder, or simply sensory impairment or sensory challenged. It all means the same thing. They are not separate disorders. A lot of parents now say, "My child has sensory problems." Sensory is now one of the buzzwords of our age. Number 2. It is a sad fact. Sensory integration dysfunction is not considered an acceptable diagnostic label according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, or rather what is known as the DSM-5. Last published in 2013, the DSM-5 is the industry standard and the outmost authority on psychiatric diagnosis. Psychiatric disorders are defined as abnormalities in cognition, or how we think and perform mental functions, abnormalities in mood, how we think and relate to others, abnormalities in behavior, how we conduct ourselves or our actions, and abnormalities in perception, how we see and hear the things around us. Sensory integration dysfunction affects all of these things. Just because it hasn't been included in this reference book yet, doesn't mean sensory challenges do not exist. Hopefully it will be included in the 6th edition of the DSM. Number 3. The signs and symptoms of sensory integration dysfunction often overlap or are confused with other brain-based disorders, making diagnosis difficult. Children with sensory impairment are often labeled as being autistic. Many autistic children have sensory impairment, but sensory integration dysfunction is not the same as having autism, and at this point it is not considered a genetic disorder like autism. When children with autism have their sensory integration challenges addressed, they function much better, but they still have autism. Children with sensory integration dysfunction, having the right type of intervention and support, can overcome their challenges. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorder, anxiety disorder, learning disabled, conduct disorder, as well as other behavioral problems, are often confused with sensory integration dysfunction. It is important children with brain-based disorders be diagnosed accurately, because the intervention chosen and the outcome is dependent on the diagnosis being correct. Number 4. Children with sensory integration dysfunction respond well to interventions working on body awareness, developmental movement, auditory stimulation, reciprocal cross-body work to engage both hemispheres of the brain, and improving motor coordination. You may notice medication is not on this list. Trying medication first before other therapies is all too common a mistake, but the pharmaceutical companies and the insurance companies prefer people to be on medication for obvious reasons, having to do with making profit for big pharma and cost savings for insurance companies. Medication is also seen as a quick fix by doctors directing treatment and by parents who are anxious to help their child. Quick fixes with medication for brain-based disorders of childhood are rare, and filling prescriptions should wait until some of the other interventions have been attempted for at least 3 months. Number 5. Children with sensory integration dysfunction are on a spectrum just like children with autism. Symptoms can range from mild to severe. A child with mild symptoms may look like they just don't like new situations or avoid participating in activities with other children. The child may appear to have anxiety or an anxiety disorder, but really they have difficulty coordinating themselves for new activities and being social with so many other children all at the same time as a result of being sensory impaired. A child with more severe symptoms may have difficulty with language, communication, controlling their actions, playing cooperatively with others, and picking up on social cues. Pathways in the brain of a sensory impaired child have difficulties receiving, relaying, processing, and acting upon sensory information. What that looks like can be very different for every child. Number 6. Unlike some other brain-based disorders, sensory integration dysfunction affects the soft wiring of the brain, meaning there is no structural changes in the brain or permanent damage. Great. It means the child has infinite capacity to change how their brain is receiving, transmitting, processing, and acting in response to the sensory information. but it also means imaging, such as an MRI, is not going to be helpful as a diagnostic tool. Number 7. Sensory challenged children require dynamic solutions to improve connections in their nervous system. That means focusing on skills such as handwriting or playing computer games to improve memory in isolation is not going to be as effective as movement-based therapies involving social interaction, changing body, head and eye positions, and getting down on the floor, rolling around, and learning to use all your parts. With the right type of input, or externally induced information, the nervous system of the child with sensory challenges can mature, organize, and connect more effectively. Number 8. Although common, children do not have to have auditory hypersensitivity or tactile hypersensitivity to have sensory integration dysfunction. Auditory hypersensitivity is an intolerance or fear of loud noises. Tactile hypersensitivity is an intolerance or strong dislike of certain types of touch. Particularly light touching of the skin, clothing fabrics, clothing seams and tags, or having skin wet or sticky can make some children with sensory impairment very uncomfortable and distracted. Hypersensitivities are common, but not essential for this diagnosis. Number 9. Sensory integration dysfunction affects both boys and girls. Although a higher number of boys appear to be affected, a large percentage of sensory challenged children are girls. Number 10. Sensory integration dysfunction is a much missed diagnosis. Even if sensory is a pop culture buzzword, there are a lot of children out there who can be helped greatly if they are properly diagnosed and treated. Help inform people by sharing this video, and I promise it will help at least one child.